Well, good afternoon, all, and thank you for joining us in this workshop, this Aspire workshop about trauma, uh, our healing, our trauma, finding light in the midst of it all. I am your host, Patricia Veazey. This is the second session of the trauma session with Aspire. Last week, just a quick review, we talked about grief and loss. If that's something that you missed, you may go to our Facebook page and view that. We talked about grief and loss and how we could get lost in grief and understanding that there is a light at the end of that tunnel. So today we're going to be talking a little more about trauma as well, but we're going to be talking about domestic violence today and how that manifests in your life. And we have some lovely guest speakers. They're going to share their stories, and they're also going to share how they came out on the other side of that. We're wanting to give people hope and understanding about how to deal with trauma and applying some of those tools, as I said, to come out on the other side. If you are familiar with the Aspire series, you know that we always start with a prayer and a question of the day. I understand that not everyone is into prayer, so if that's not something that you're into, we understand, no problem. You might just want to mute your computer for a few seconds. We'll take care of that, and then we'll be right back. All right, our prayer for the day. It's a healing prayer. Lord Jesus, heal me. Heal in me whatever you need to see healed. Heal me for whatever might separate me from you. Heal my memory, heal my heart, heal my emotions, heal my spirit, and heal my body. Dear Lord, also heal my soul. Lay your hands gently upon me and heal me. Through your love for me, I know that all should be well. Amen. All right. So for our question of the day, if you want to jump in the chat and answer that question, if you want to take yourself off mute and answer the question, that is fine as well. The question today is, and the purpose of the question is just to get you thinking, but the question today is, if you could ask God one question, what would you ask?
Miss Patricia, this is Kiona, and I have it.
Let's
Can
hear
you
it,
hear
Miss
me?
Kiona. Yes.
And I know, because I'm a faith-going woman, but I would ask Eve and God, why did they give women menstrual cycles in the menopause? I've always said it. Woo!
Yes, ma'am. And when you get that answer, could you share it with me? Because I've often wondered that myself.
Yes.
Why, God, why? That's a good one. Thank you, Keon. I needed that. Anyone else? What would your question be to God if you could ask? Felicia, I'm getting a dark screen. I'm not seeing. Oh, okay, because Keona's got it. Okay. Well, I'll share mine. If I could ask God one question, what would my question be? My question would be, God, am I getting this right? Am I doing it the way that you would like for me to do it? Is there something I need to change? That would be my question to God. Anyone else want to jump in? I'm checking the chat. Okay.
That's such a good question. I will say it's really a good question because I have so many, and I can't just pick one. But if I could pick one, I guess would say is, why is he not physically here on this planet with us? In that sense,
okay.
There's popes, there's different leaders, there's different other religious areas, but for him to be that single one that many of us kind of connect to, why is he not here with us on this earth physically?
That is a good question. That is a good one. Okay. All right. Once again, if you want to add yours to the chat later on, you may do so. So we're going to get started. I mentioned last week, and I'd like to mention again, I had been asked, someone asked me, why did I want to do the topic? Oh, someone missed our question of the day. The question of the day was, once again, if you could ask God one question, what would you ask?
I've thought of an answer, Patricia.
Oh, okay,
You
good.
asked me, okay, I feel like I'm so bad at this because Patricia always shares her question of the day with me a day before, and I still never have an answer. But I think I would ask, like I believe in the creation story of Adam and Eve being created, and I think I would ask God if he was happy with what Adam named the animals. Because sometimes I'm like, okay, what if Adam was just, I don't know, making up some crazy names and God was like, what are you doing?
That is a good one. Did you really mean to call that monkey a monkey? That is a good one. That is a good one. Sharon, now that you heard the question of the day, do you have an answer?
That's a deep one. I was hoping for something a little bit more lightweight. I'm gonna have to think on this and then put it in the chat later on.
Okay, all right, that's allowed. It's for anyone else, if you want to put it in the chat later, you may do so. So as I was saying, I was asked why I wanted to do the subject of trauma. And as I mentioned last week, I think oftentimes we are a little unsure of what is considered trauma in our lives. Because a lot of times things happen to us and we just want to get past it. We want to sweep it under the rug and keep moving and not understand how deeply the situation may have affected us. And I also wanted to talk about trauma because oftentimes I feel that trauma manifests itself in our lives in so many different ways. And sometimes it may be viewed as something different. We could look at someone who's suffering through trauma and think, oh, they're unmotivated. Or we may think they're a little lazy, they're not doing anything. But trauma can weigh us down. So my purpose is to talk about it, give people tools and resources to deal with it. So as my grandmother used to say, we can get it out, get it over, and move on to the next thing. Okay? Or at least be able to function better, I should say, in trauma. All right. So we have some guest speakers with us today that are going to be sharing their journey with us, their journey through trauma, and they're going to talk about how they found their light in the midst of trauma. And we're also going to be once again talking about some tools to deal with that. We are going to start off with Miss Cecelle. I think I got it right that time. And if you don't mind, she's gonna unmute and share with us her story, her journey, and we're gonna see how we can learn from that. Miss Cecelle?
Hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Cicelle Beemon. Just to give a little bit about who I am, what I do, I am a mother of two boys. I'm a big auntie, I'm a big sister, even to a big brother, I'm a big sister. And I'm also the program assistant here at the Women's Center at Purdue Fort Wayne. We do a lot of programs and support services to our students who consider themselves as women, as well as students, all of our students regarding sexual assault awareness, domestic violence awareness, and things of that nature. And so a little bit of my story, started off, if many things, traditional as all get out. Met a young guy when I was in elementary. We became really good friends, and I've always loved his mindset, his way he sees the world, and his values. And so after high school, got together, got closer. I was dealing with a person already, and I already was having my first child, but going through domestic issues with him and realizing that he wasn't going to be a good father, or he wasn't just going to be right for me. I left him and ended up being with my the guy that I was interested in. We'll just call him X. And so being with him, he knew how I grew up. He knew my mother, he knew my brother, he knew my family. I just felt comfortable with him. Always felt seen him as a protector and all that good stuff that you would want, in a significant other. And dealing with one of my first traumas was going through the grief process of my mother passing. He was there for me and was just a big pillar in my life until he started going through issues in his own. And me being a, good girlfriend at the time, doing the wife roles, I was there for him, trying to help him get his mind right, help him financially, all that stuff. I was going to school, taking care of my family after my mother, and dealing with all the things that come with dealing after with someone who passes away. And he took a turn for the worse. And it was the first time he had put his hands on me, and I did not understand. It was something so small that it didn't even have to deal with me for the reasons why he put his hands on me. It was a big fight in my house going on with my other friends that was there. He came targeting me, and next thing you know, I was underneath his fist. And that, it shocked me. It did shock me at first because there was, so much was going on. But the first time he did it, it put me in a state of, wow, I can't believe this person did this to me. And so my children were there at the time, my sister was there at the time, and him being such I'm a good guy, I didn't expect him to do that. And I think that's like the first thing that threw me off. I didn't expect that. And I never was a big fighter, me personally. I don't like confrontation. I'm really logical before I get more emotional about certain things. And like I said, it didn't click to me until later on. I separated from him. I knew that wasn't a good person I didn't want to be with, but just something just kept calling me back to be with him. And I took that chance, just like anybody else. I forgave, I let go, let's try anew. That person ended up having to serve some time for something different. And so I kind of stuck by his side through all of that process. So when he got out, he came to come live with me. And I thought about it first. I was like, well, maybe should I? And it was like, but something in me was just like, I loved him. I looked at all those attributes, and not really thinking about what he did. I thought about what he did, but I'm like, I know so much about him. I know he's a good person. It happened so long ago. We can move forward. And then when he got out, everything was cool. I was working a really good position through an AmeriCorps program where a lot of my time was taken up, where during the day, of course, my children were at daycare, I was at school, and he would be at home. Like a good person, like a smart person that I am, I gave him many tasks to do. I got him books to read. I had bought a brand new bed set. So I was like, I got him things that he could put his hands to do and to stay busy while he'd find a job. And so, he couldn't find a job. Things was getting more frustrating for him. And for me, it wasn't clicking because only what his history was, I knew he was able to find a job, but I'm like, well, was he just being lazy? Because me and my aspect, I'm working, I'm taking care of the home. A single mother has to have a home and running water. So I made sure those things was going on. And those are good places for evil things to sneak in. And so things took a turn for the worse where we were getting ready to go to the mall. And I didn't have a car, but his brother had a car. And so me and him got into an issue where he didn't feel like he wanted to go, but I really wanted to go. And then issue happened where I called his brother and said, you know what, never mind, we're not going. He's acting some type of way. And he was like, okay, well, I'll just see y'all later. Then my ex runs upstairs, starts to yell in my face all over again. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold back. And I'm just you said you didn't want to go. I'm trying to make it simple because I didn't want to have no other issues. I didn't want confrontation. And so next thing you know, he pushes me, and I'm in my children's room at this time. So he pushes me and my children right there to see. And again, I was shocked. And then I was with him for about 6 to 7 years. And all those times he'd put his hands on me, for me, it was always a moment of shock. Like I never got out of that like, oh my God, did he just do this?
Mm.
Until one moment when I was, I had got a new position at the university where I was going to be the program assistant for the Women's Center. And in this department, there's programs that we do regarding sexual assault awareness, domestic violence, things of that nature. And so I didn't really click 2 and 2 together that I was in something dangerous until I really took those moments and studied the training myself. And I was like, for me, you would think, you know, I'm a smart young woman. I'm going to school. I got my mind right. I know I've seen what love got to do with it. That was my first, example. And I was like, you know what? I don't want that to happen to me. And then I find myself in a situation where I'm in it with him. Now, I will say before I left that relationship, there were times where I did leave. So I knew that I was in something detrimental, but my heart and my mind was not matching up at the same time. My mind was, I gotta go, but my heart was, but you love them, look at the great qualities, just because I cared. I cared about this man. He had lost his daughter while we were together. He was dealing with his mother and father while we were together. So I put a lot of my time and I invested so much in him. When you have a plan and you have a visual plan set out, you want to see it come into fruition.
Right.
And I had visions for him, but that's where my heart and my mind couldn't make those connections. And so in those times of me leaving, it was getting closer and closer to realizing that I got to get out. And so the final straw was when we got into it between me and about my children and how I was raising my children. And next thing you know, that turned into something scary in my eyes, where I felt that that was going to be the moment where that was the day where I was going to die. And when I got to that point, I see my children seeing me, seeing this person, and the song that came into my head, he kept asking me a redundant question, and I was about to break down. And the first thing that came to my head was a song by Tamela Mann, "Change Me," and I just kept singing that in my head. I didn't say nothing, but I just kept singing in my head. And I was like, this is that point where I got to go. I need to change because this person wouldn't. And then from that, I did one of my same tricks that I always did with this person. I left in the middle of the night while they worked third shift, packed up my children, packed up my home, and I got out of there. Normally, we would conversate back and forth to, this, why I'm mad at you, but this time I did not answer the phone at all. And that was the hardest part to do, was to literally let go. And then from those moments, just from everything I've kind of put together, from the trainings that I went through, from the people that I inspired, that looked up to me, I knew for me it was that I didn't want to die because I didn't want my children to ask that question. Where's my mama? Because I asked that question even for my own mom, and I know why she's going, but for me to die in such an unnecessary way, my children didn't deserve that. So through all of that, I found my healing. I found my resolution to get out through education and keeping my faith. Because one, my faith was that subconscious thought in the back of my mind, I'm still here, I'm with you, it's time to change this up to get out. And then that educational piece, I'm noticing these things that this person is doing to me, and it's evident in the education that I'm taking, because I see it. So I know I'm not going crazy. He's being manipulative, or he's being controlling, this are those symptoms. And so all those things kind of put into an aspect for me to understand that I am way much more worth it, and I should continue to live my life. So I'm still dealing with the trauma, still healing in my own ways, but the biggest jump for me to recognize was what I went through and what got me out of that in the first place. I would not be here today if I did not take those steps to get out of that. And I would still be in mind of mush. I wouldn't have been the beautiful woman that I am today, so in the wrap up of it, the way that I've gotten out of my trauma was educating myself on what I was going through, and as well as, keeping the faith, knowing that God is with me and I'm going to get out of this. I need to be steadfast in my own works to be able to make those moves, because I just wouldn't be able to get out by just saying, God, help me get out. I even cast a spell one time, y'all. It was crazy. I don't know what I was doing, but I was trying to get out. But the thing was that I needed to make those moves. I couldn't rely on those certain other things to do it. I had to make that change. And so I'm so happy that I did, because I wouldn't be here speaking with you guys. I'd be the one watching, looking like what's going on. So
Okay.
other than that, that's kind of a little bit about my story and how I went through what I went.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that with us. We had some comments in the chat. Miss Elka, who she will introduce herself later on, she's from Center for Nonviolence, said that's a common experience among survivors. Explain what you meant by that, Elka, common experience.
Yeah, when Cecelle was talking about not connecting her own experience literally to the work she was doing, right?
Yeah.
With you know, folks who were experiencing some of the same things. That's such a common experience, more so than people realize. Survivors often, especially when you are a survivor of color, especially for Black women, we just don't see it that way, right? And in my time working with survivors, Ms. Kay and I, you know, we hear these stories again and again. And so often the women that we have worked with have said, Cecelle, exactly the things that you're saying now. So you are most certainly not alone, right? But it is really hard for survivors, and again, especially survivors of color, to connect their experiences to this broad category of I am a victim, right? Or I am experiencing domestic violence or intimate partner violence. Sometimes that's just a difficult connection to make.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And you know what? I too have gone through some training, and what I realized in my training with domestic violence, I didn't connect how it starts. I always assumed that just one day the perpetrator starts to, you know, perpetrate, but I didn't realize the gradual way that it begins. You know, that it may start with, as Cecelle said, a shove or a hair pull or being controlling. And it just kind of builds from there. I don't know why, but it never connected for me that there are steps that the person goes through before they start to perpetrate, or they become violent towards someone. We had another comment from Sharon. She says, I'm so glad you've overcome that and you remembered that Tamala Man song in the midst of what you were going through. Sharon also loves that song. And in the chat, she's also shared a link to anyone who wants to hear that song. And I like that. For me, I am the same way. Sometimes I will rehearse lyrics in my head when I'm going through something tough and I need to stay grounded and need to, you know, stay mindful of what I'm doing. So I'm thankful that that song was there for you. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for sharing.
I had a quick question, Patricia.
Sure.
For Cecelle, just real quick. I mean, because that is my song, and now when you said that, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm you know, really thinking about that. Why do you think that song, because that song says, change me, oh Lord, or change me, oh God, okay, make me more like you, okay? So why did that song do it for you? What was it about those lyrics, you think?
Well, first, her voice is just beautiful. It just resonates and it sticks with you. But I guess you could say it was when I was in my relationship with this person, I left about 3-4 times. And I always found some type of excuse to come back. And I was digging in myself to say, okay, you know, I was digging in me. I wasn't digging into them. I was digging into me to figure out why would I want to go back. And I was getting stuck in my head that, you know, this person was good. And I would just, my heart, like I said, my heart, my mind did not connect. And I felt like my heart kept playing with my head. And I was just like, I needed to change internally before I made another decision. I needed to change my mindset. I needed to change, because if I went back to this person with, you know, emotional thought, then I would be going back for the wrong reasons. And that buildup, I feel like what kind of made that disconnect was that it's that emotional, and you're looking at the situation now, not the overall picture. Oh, it was because I broke something, or I didn't iron his clothes right, or I didn't wake him up, you know, and you're stuck on the reason why you didn't do what you did or whatever. So those were the parts of me that needed to change. I knew whenever I had an issue with this person, I always leaned on God to help me. But when this situation, because it was the the most brutalest thing he did to me. And I was like, am I going to accept this, or am I going to just keep it the way it was? And I kept telling myself, I'm not going to keep it the way it was. So I needed to change. And I think that 2 and 2 kind of hit for me on that faith-based and that subconscious base of myself, that I needed to change. And it was just those songs, that song that it just hit me like, God is with me, because that song came to me and it had to.
Powerful. Thank you.
Yes, yes. That very well explained. I understand exactly what you're saying now. Ms. Elka says, on average, it takes survivors 7 to 10 attempts before they are able to finally escape the violence. 7 to 10 attempts. Wow. Thank you, Ms. Cecelle. We'll come back to you. We have another person who's brave, and they're going to share their story with us. Miss Kalila, are you ready to share your journey with us?
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Cecile. Appreciate you. Appreciate your life. Let me first say that my story is a lifelong story. And so I will share only what I believe is going to bring us to some understanding of who Kalila is. My story began in my infancy. And so a lifelong history of abuse and neglect. And you mentioned the word protector, and that resonated with me because when you're in a household, you believe the persons around you are supposed to be your protectors. And that simply was not the case for me. So as I moved through my life in this environment, I learned, because I was groomed to this, that I was no more than an object to be used. And I had no say-so in that usage, whatever it was, that's how that was. And so while mentally I could understand that there was something better out there because I could see things differently for other girls my age, emotionally, I was very detached from that because of the grooming I had received. I was always meant for this role. And my aspiring to be an educator was kind of put way back, but it was always something that I looked for. I found a lot of my strength in writing. Just writing a lot of poems. I began writing poems when I was like roughly 8 years old. They began to materialize into what my thought processes were. And I held on to that particular tool of writing down my emotions and writing down my feelings because I couldn't tell it to anybody. No one would believe me anyway. That's another part of my era, that nobody is going to believe you. So you hold it in. On top of that, there was the threats of, death, always a part of that, So as I moved through my life, I had multiple attacks upon my spirit, upon my body, upon my mind. I was raped. I was trafficked into this city, even though at the time I didn't know that was what was happening. That word was not even anything to me. You just were, someone saw you and, they were an older guy and they treated you well and they gave you money and then they skirted you off to another location because you were in need of something, or they saw your vulnerability and they thought that could be used. And that was around the age of 16. Right after I had my second child, by the way. My second child was born when I was 15. My first was born when I was 13. And all of this is around all of this trauma. I'm becoming a mother to other people, and I'm loving on these two little people and realizing that this is why I'm living, these two little people. Now, I knew that, I just didn't know why that was. When I was trafficked into this city, that man was 24 years old. And so I was thrust into this environment of sex and drugs. And I became a drug runner in this city. And basically, unbeknownst to me, I'm blind to a lot of this, and I'm just like, I'm seeing it as a young girl in the light of, all of this glitter, so to speak, because these men are handing me hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and I'm walking around, with all the new, styles and, the little heels and all this, and other people are babysitting my children, and all these other kinds of things. And I'm being skirted off to Michigan and New Jersey and New York, and all the time I'm carrying the drugs. So I'm like thinking I'm just like having a ball because I don't know anything. In steps a very strong voice in my life. Dr. If I may say his name, Dr. Alfred Stovall. And he has passed away, as you all know, but when he saw me to give me my very first examination, it was because of an STD. I knew nothing about STDs. What does that mean? What are you talking about? And so he began to educate me. And one of the things he asked me, he says, "Where are you from?" And I told him, he says, "You need to go home to your mama." And I told him, "I can't. My mama doesn't want me." And he didn't argue that point with me. He said, "Well, if there's anything that you need or anyone that you want to talk to or something happens, you call me right away. You call me right away." He says, "And I'm going to make an appointment for you. I want you to come back next week." And I says, "Okay, I got a doctor's appointment. I got to go next week." I'm thinking it's medical. I got to go next week. So when I went the following week, he didn't take me into the exam room. He showed me into his office. And he sat down and he had a conversation with me. And he began to give me drops and bits of what was happening in my life. That this person that I was with was actually harming me. And that's not even possible. He came over and got me out of a bad situation and he brought me here. And he's, put me in my own apartment and he's giving me money, whenever I ask for it, and he's taking care of everything. He says, "That man is using you." Okay, well, I understand using me. So I says, "Well, I'll think about what you said." He said, "Don't just think about it." He says, "Start making a plan. And I don't care how long the plan lasts. Start making a plan for yourself. You've got children. You have to step up. You've got children." And when he said that, then the two began to connect. Why do I have these children? I have to step up for these children. Well, roughly in about 3 months of time after that, I discovered, lo and behold, I'm having another child. So this is my third child. And I'm in this flux almost, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm actually doing here. Separation from this person was not easy. He took his belt off and he beat me, severely beat me. And I had to call home, which was like the first time I had called home in a good amount of time. And I had to tell my mama that I had been beaten. And she sent my oldest brother here. My oldest brother made his appearance, and he's like about 6'5", the friend that he brought with him was like 6'6", 6'7", and they're standing there like henchmen. They're getting ready to do some bodily harm to somebody. And guns are on the table and all this, and the drama of it all, and the knowledge that this person who, again, I thought I loved, can be harmed. I'm going to try to protect him. Don't do anything to him. It was all my fault. I said that. Don't do this. You know, I did that. That's why he's upset. So all of these things to protect him. My brother looked at me. He said, and he looked over at him. He said, if I have to come back, I don't care what she says. If I have to come back, I'm done with you. And you're going to be done. So this is real crazy to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks later, I decided I better go on back home. So I came back. My life became so agitated and in such turmoil that I couldn't really breathe.
Mm-hmm.
I kept a choke like, and I went from one series of abusive relationships through another, where I'm getting in fights and, you know, persons are beating me with their fist and I'm cutting people with razors and knives. And I mean, it just was just so tumultuous. What helped me to begin a process of bringing myself out of that was, yes, my children that I had. And now I had 4.
Mm-hmm.
And the women around me who were older than me, and when I looked at them, they were going through similar types of situations. And I began to say, you don't take that. You don't have to take that. You don't have to do that. I would make long distance calls to Dr. Stovall and get his advice on different things. I continued to take steps that was moving me, I thought moving me forward, but I always landed in a situation where I was being battered. When my mother passed, I was 22 and I had 5 children. I had my 5th when I was 20 years old. My mother had become my best friend, actually. Our relationship turned completely around. But it was only at the point of me being 20 years old that relationship began to flower. So when she was gone so abruptly, I crashed. I totally crashed within myself. And lo and behold, winded in another relationship with another abuser.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I actually faced death that I believe was my turning point. I was in a relationship. I had left it. In my head, I had left it. I had moved into my own place. This person, whenever they would see me, they would jump out of a vehicle. The vehicle would stop, they'd jump out, they slap me, I better get home. What am I doing out walking the streets? I'm nothing but, you know, the H word, I'm the B word, I'm all kinds of other things. So I was 20 years old and the person broke into my home. And at this time, not only am I the mother of 5 children, but I also have a granddaughter. And I was preparing her, going to take her to her appointment. And the person broke in my home. I had gotten my granddaughter ready and had her on the bed, and I was getting ready to get my bath. And I turned up, got up from the tub. I was running water in. I turned the water off. I turned and he was right there. And all that I remember of that is that his hands were around my throat. I remember seeing his eyes, his hands around my throat. And so from the visual that I have in my head, I was already out of body seeing this. I died.
Mm.
And in that death, I actually spoke to my guardian and asked them, am I dead? And they said, you have to go back. They didn't say I was dead. They didn't say I wasn't dead. It just said I have to go back. I could see past it. I looked past and it's like, it's out there, And he said, you had to go back. I asked why? Why? And the next thing that I remember, I'm screaming. I'm just screaming out and I see people around me and I'm, on this gurney and I'm going in and out and in and out. At one point, then people are coming into a hospital, nurses, doctors, I'm hooked up to machines. And the last thing that I recollect before I go into a state of a coma was that the doctor had awakened me. A detective was there asking me who had done this to me. And I had given them a name. And I don't remember anything else. I woke up sometime later. And honestly, I woke up because I had to go to the bathroom. And that's all that I remember. I got to go to the bathroom. Okay, let's get up. Just, And so I don't want to call anybody. Let me get up. And I see this thing and I'm trying to get up. I get up and I go into the bathroom. And as I'm coming out, I stop and I see the mirror of my face and it's unrecognizable. I don't even know who I am. And I start screaming. In rushes a nurse. Oh my goodness, dear, no. Oh, no, you can't do this. You can't be up. The miracle of death and life for me was that it stood still. It definitely stood still and brought me over to this side where when I woke up, I was basically in a state of, I have to get back to my children. I have a little bit of pain. I know that. That's expected. I threw up. Okay. You throw up too if you went through what I went through. A lot of cockiness was back. I gotta go. I gotta go home. I can't do this. I can't stay in the hospital. This is luxury for me. I gotta go home. And the doctors, 7 of them standing around wondering, how did this even happen? How did this miracle happen? How is this person still alive? This person was in a coma. How is she still alive? I left that area roughly 3 weeks after that, and I moved back here into Fort Wayne. And when I moved back here to Fort Wayne, I met a person who I felt comfortable giving my story to, and that person respected me, validated my experience, and honored me. And they said, I don't know what it is I can do for you, but what I know I will never do to you is to harm you. And believing that gave me the first opportunity I had had in a very long time to have a relationship with a protector. Because no matter what anybody said, no matter what anybody did, that person stood on my side. And I had never had that. That person encouraged me to go back to school. I had been encouraged time to time and always something thrown up. I went back to school. I went out to what was then IPFW, PFW now. And I began studying psychology and sociology. Sociology and both as majors. I dropped the psychology down to a minor and focused on sociology because within that, I saw that the social environment that I had lived through was my trauma. And that in order for me to be able to excel, I had to change my environment. And that environment had to be changed, not just for myself, but for my children. I had to make it conducive to us growing and moving beyond where we were, where we had been. And I opened up that space for that. And education became very, very important to me and to my household, because my memory of me wanting to be an educator came to the full force. And
Wow.
so I began to put myself into situations of learning. No matter what it was that was going on, no matter what committee it was, no matter what endeavor was happening at the university, I was going to be involved in it. I wanted to learn the sociology. And I wanted to understand then too, why is it that I was blamed for all the things that had happened to me when I was the innocent person? And
You were the victim, exactly.
And so I began to do that. As I moved through that, I educated myself and made sure that my children were educated. And I came out on the other side of it. I acquired my degrees in sociology and in women's studies, 2 bachelors, and then also my master's degree. And after my master's program, I went back to the university and I began to teach at the university, the undergrad in sociology. I taught at Ivy Tech. I taught at St. Francis College. And so I began to fulfill those kinds of dreams that I had. But education is the biggest tool.
It sounds like it. I'm hearing both you and Cecelle saying that education is the key, basically doing something for yourself to get
Yes.
you out of the situation. Exactly.
Learning who you are and learning about your circumstances. Because once you really take off those glasses and see your circumstances for what it is, that's when you can change what it is.
Thank you so much, Miss Kalila, for sharing your story. And all I can say is, wow, I've just heard 2 stories from 2 very strong women. Thank you for blessing us with your story. Miss Elka, give us some information. If someone is listening and they hear their story today, what's one of the first steps they can take to come out on the other end?
Make a phone call. Make a phone call. You know, for survivors, the experience of isolation is so intense, right? That feeling that, and some survivors are literally physically isolated, right? Their abusers keep them isolated. But isolation isn't just always physical. The isolation that happens for survivors is an emotional isolation. It's a psychological isolation. It's a belief that your abuser has sort of instilled in you that you are separate from other people and nobody is going to understand you. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to love you. Nobody's going to be there for you. Nobody's going to reach out, right? And so if there is one message at the center that we make sure survivors understand, is that that's a lie. That is an absolute lie. And there are people who will understand you. There are people who are there to support you. There are people who understand that you are a person of magnificent power and strength. Survivors are not weak. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I see that.
Survivors are the strongest people that I know, that I've ever interacted with, because they have survived incredible circumstances. Miss K, I've known Miss K for years now. She and I are very close. We're colleagues and coworkers, but we're also very good friends. And Miss K is my hero. She is, what you have heard from her today is not even the tip of the spear of her story. And for her to have come out on the other end is such a testament, right, to the power that we have within us, okay, to change our lives and to change our stories, right? and to be the people we want to be. You know, at the Center for Nonviolence, what we do is, well, first of all, just real quick, let me just say what our mission is. Our mission is to provide education, support, and advocacy to end domestic and other forms of violence, okay? And so we do that in this three-tiered way. We provide prevention services for folks who are at risk for, you know, using violence, potentially using violence. So prevention, you know, really trying to stop it before it starts. We also provide intervention services, okay, for folks who are currently using violence or causing harm, or have used violence and caused harm, okay? And then, of course, we provide support and advocacy for survivors, right? For people who are, you know, in the midst of it, or who are trying to figure out how to come out of it. We are there. So we provide this holistic support system for everyone, okay, who is experiencing violence, again, whether it's that you're at risk for it, you're using it, or you're surviving it. We're here for folks. Yeah, we are definitely here for folks. There were so many things I heard today. I know we only have a couple minutes, but I just really want to validate a lot of what was spoken earlier. You know, Cecelle had said, you know, she had said that I had visions for him, right? And I think that's one of the, you know, not even just survivors, right? But just as women in this culture, in this society, we are culturally conditioned to see people not as they are, but who we want them to be.
The potential.
Exactly, who we imagine to be. And when you said that, Cecile, reminded me so much of a couple of things came to mind for me. One was my sister, when she finally, you know, sort of broke free of a very toxic relationship with my niece's father. And just watching her on the floor in a puddle of tears and hysterics, repeating over and over again, this isn't how it was supposed to be. She just kept repeating. I couldn't get her to stop. And so I just let her lay there and say it, and I just rubbed her back because she just kept repeating it. This isn't how it was supposed to be, right? And then, Ms. K, you remember Magenica? We had a client in group one time, this young woman who said, and survivors are so smart, so smart. She said, we play mind movies in our heads. And I have never forgotten that. The mind movies, right? You know, the idea of what's happening in relationships where violence and abuse is going on. Patricia, you said something earlier too that's sparking me. You said, I didn't realize how it starts, these subtle ways, right? You know, I started my time at the center actually working with men, not women. And I can tell you that these guys, y'all, anyone who's an abuser, but right now I'm just talking about it in heterosexual relationships. These guys know exactly what they're doing, right? No one comes to you as a violent monster, right? They groom. Ms. K used the word groom. They groom. You know, we think of children being groomed into, you know, situations where there's molestation going on. But that grooming process isn't something that just happens to kids. That grooming process happens to adults. It happens to anyone who is surviving violence, right? And it's kind of like, this is a terrible analogy. I hope this isn't offensive to people, but it's kind of like, you know, when you boil a lobster, you know, and you start the you know, people start I've never done it, but I've seen people boiling lobsters, and it starts out really cool, the water, the lobster's real comfortable. Things are just kind of chilling. They're happy, they're good. And before they know it, they're boiled, right? Because it's this slow buildup. It's the slow process that happens. And if you are susceptible to the things that are happening in this grooming process, you could very quickly, all of a sudden, find yourself, right, in this situation where your life is, find yourself boiling. Your life is literally at risk now. when it did not start that way. Like, I think that's so important for people to understand. It does not start in the way that people think, right? We have to stop in this culture blaming survivors. We have to stop. We ask the wrong questions. We ask, why didn't they leave? Instead of, why is this person so abusive? Why is this person committing acts of violence? Why is this person thinking that they have to pull control and power from somebody else instead of locating it within themselves, right? So anyway, I could go on and on, but I'll stop now. I know we're at time. But just real quick, if I could, Patricia, I want to make sure, I'll pop it in the chat, but I want to make sure people have my email address.
Yes.
Because if you have any other questions for me or Miss K, regarding what we've talked about today, or we actually have an event, speaking of trauma and healing, we have an event coming up on the 19th of June. So it's going to be on Juneteenth, where we're going to have Dr. Joy DeGruy. Oh, some of you may know her. We're going to have Dr. Joy DeGruy facilitating a conference, a workshop. It's going to be virtual, but it's all on healing from trauma. Healing from racial trauma specifically, but we all know that that's tied into so many other traumas in our lives, right? Especially Black folks. So I'm going to pop my email in the chat here. And if any of you would like more info about that, please contact me. I have several of you already on my e-blast list, so you'll be getting that info. But this or any other thing that you may have questions about or want more information or just need to sit down and talk to Ms. K or myself, we're here for you. And thank you so much for having us here today as well.
Thank you all so much for being with us today. Thank you for sharing your story. She is putting information in the chat if you need to reach out to her further. This has been very empowering for me. This has been great. Thank you once again, ladies. Next week, next Thursday, we will be wrapping it up and we'll be talking more about the tools that a person can use to get through these traumas, to get through their journey. Once again, thank you. And everyone, have a great day from Inspire.
Really quick, Patricia, sorry. I just want to also invite everyone that this Saturday, we are having a mental health and wellness expo. So it is this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I can pop the flyer in the chat. But our first presentation we're having is actually on healing from trauma. So we're going to have someone from Mental Health America come and talk. So there'll be 4 different health presentations that will take place. So I just want to invite everyone to come out on Saturday.
Yay. Wonderful. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Hope to see you on Saturday.
Rest of your day.
Bye-bye.